What was your biggest I'll walk it off injury that turned out serious? In March, a friend and I were bouldering and a bunch of rock broke. I fell 10-12 ft onto rock. Broke my leg and tore a ligament in my foot. My friend took a hilarious video of the whole thing. I walked 1-2 mile back to my car after making the assertion I'd probably know if it was broken. Right? Double quote. I was bouldering in a gym. Couldn't get the last hole to top out the route. Fell from 15 feet 4 times that day. Last attempt I made the transition and touched the top of the wall before falling back to the mat. Hurt a bit but I was able to walk on, so I headed out. Decided to take the offer of someone else driving me home. Got home and climbed the stairs like a toddler to crawl into bed. Couldn't get comfortable, so I called a friend to run me down to the dock that was half a mile away. They strongly encouraged me to go to the hospital since they didn't have an x-ray. Turns out I shattered my L1 vertebrae. Few days in the hospital for surgery and recovery and I was back on my feet. I don't climb anymore due to fear of an impact injury. I still want one of those rock walls that hang over a pool though. 2 broken wrists from running into a wall and using my hands to stop myself. My dad kept trying to get me to climb up onto a bunk bed. Only then did we realize my wrists weren't just bruised but both broken. I did pretty much the exact same thing. Except with just one wrist. It took about 3 hours but my hand swelled up so bad I was having trouble moving my fingers. That was when I realized it wasn't just bruised. I used to have heart problems. I'd cough up a little blood sometimes. But was like could be worse. Ended up having surgery to fix it because it began occurring every day. I didn't quite get to coughing up blood. But we went out for pizza and on the way back, I started having chest pains. I was struggling even walking to the main avenue to catch a taxi. Got home and was doubled over in pain. After about an hour my wife finally says maybe we should go to the hospital. We catch a taxi which she stops a full avenue away from the emergency. So I walked it while having a heart attack. Long story short, several blocked arteries. I was 46 and weighed 160 and worked out. And lucky. I almost died of pneumonia until my wife forced me to go to the hospital. She couldn't sleep because I was crying in pain every time I moved an inch. Doctor said if I had waited another day I probably wouldn't be alive. I got to ask, why did you not seek medical help if you cried in pain every time you moved? Edit. To those citing $ is the reason I understand as I'm liable for $1,000 for 2 MRIs right now, but I wanted to hear ARP's reason as well. And yes, I'm in the US. Got distracted while holding a kicking pad for my taekwondo instructor. Hit my eye with my own hand when he kicked. No big deal. Saw lots of black floating dots, which now I know is a huge red flag for retina detachment. Had I gone to the doctor on the next day, it'd be a quick fix, laser. 5 days later it progressed to a big tear. Blocked all my left eye vision. 5 surgeries in a year. 1 took 6 hours. 3 times spending 15 days looking down with gas inside the eye. 20% loss of left eye vision. Permanently. Not an injury, but I had appendicitis for about 12 hours before admitting I needed to go to the hospital. I had appendicitis when I was 10. It set in on Thursday afternoon and my older brother claimed I was faking it to get out of school on Friday. My mum couldn't be asked, getting a second opinion, and told me to sleep it off. When I was still complaining on Saturday morning, she begrudgingly took me to the emergency room. Regular doctor was closed on Saturday. Waited 3 hours and she was about to give up and take me home when our names were called out. 15 minutes later I was being prepped for surgery, and apparently if we left it probably would have ruptured on the drive home. And if you're wondering, neither of them seemed the least bit apologetic about not taking me seriously. Army recruit training. Section attack scenario. At the time I was about 60 kilograms. 45 kilograms pack. Carrying the minimi and ammo. Went to ground. Half slipped. Pack hit me back in the head as I went down. Scope of the gun went into my face. It hurt. I got shots off. Got up. Made some ground. She'll be right. Kept going with the training drill for a bit longer. Then realized I had a lot of blood on my front. Eventually got behind some cover. Realized I couldn't breathe through my nose and my face ached like a bitch. Touched where my nose should be. It wasn't there. Again. She'll be right. Continue the drill. Eventually. SGT saw my face covered in blood and all down my front. Came running over telling me to stay down and calling for a medevac. TLDR smashed my nose flat on a machine gun. Kept going until I was told to stop. Australian government paid for a nose reconstruction. A guy ran into me at a club and accidentally stepped on my foot. It hurt like hell and was swollen. But I was okay. Went to the doc the same week to get x-ray that showed nothing. Made an appointment for an MRI just to be sure. Got on a 6-week waiting list. When I finally got the MRI they said there had been some minor injuries inside and they would be okay soon without medical intervention. I later found out I actually had 2 broken bones. Sprained ankle and inner hematomas, but it wasn't visible on the x-ray and more or less healed until I had the MRI. Since I walked it off it all grew back together but wrong. Fast forward 4 years. The pain was so bad I needed surgery. Still have a metal plate in there. In 9th grade I twisted my ankle the wrong way jumping up to throw the basketball in gym class. It hurt so bad I almost started crying, but I held in my tears and the teacher told me to walk all the way to the office to get ice. I spent the next few periods in horrible agony thinking it was just a sprain, but I eventually called my mom to come and get me and we went to the doctor and turns out I had a fractured ankle. That stupid gym teacher was such a dirtbag for making me walk all the way to the office like that. Not an injury, but I was stung by a bee while swimming. Didn't know I had severe allergies. I nearly drowned. A buddy of mine got stung on a motorcycle. Started feeling weird but was almost home. Made it, thank God. But he said it was like that movie Memento. Said he kept waking up on the floor trying to piece together what happened. Fell down the stairs at one point before he got to a phone and called 911. Messed up. I broke my arm ripsticking. My mom ran over to see if I was okay. I said I was and we started walking back to our house. Then she pointed at my arm and I saw it. Clearly broken and swelling quickly. So I laid down in the middle of the road and threw up. A lot. There was a stain there for 2 years on that hill. Crashed on my bicycle while riding to work. Lost consciousness so I do not remember the impact. Came to. Got up. Started walking bike toward work. Thinking I just needed to walk a bit and would be okay. Saw ripped area on jacket and gloves and skin. So I realized I needed cleaned up and could not make it to work that day. Realized I was concussed when I could not remember phone number to call in sick to work. Caught a ride to emergency room. Learned I also had a neck injury. Helmet saved my life. Spent 8 weeks in a neck brace. Doing much better now almost a year later. Overall would rate the experience 0/10 and would not recommend. A friend of mine sprained his ankle while skateboarding. No big deal. Some pain but not much to do except walk it off. A few weeks later he broke it but didn't realize it. He just thought the sprain got worse. So he was walking around on a shattered ankle for 3 weeks. Fractured my forearm when I slipped on a gravel corner riding home. After 2 days of intense pain, my wife, a trained physical therapist, suggested I was being an ass. I went to the hospital, which was across the street from me. They confirmed a crack in my forearm. It didn't happen to me but my husband. Just last month actually our friends and us went to the closed beach around 4 hours away from our home. While being there obviously we decided to take a walk on the beach. Well, that specific side we were in was not nice and had a lot of rocks. My husband and some friends, they were all drunk and goofing around when my husband slipped, but he was able to catch his fall with his right leg. He started saying that it popped and it hurt a bit. We were all just like stretch it and massage it. About 30 minutes later we walked back to our hotel where he started complaining, saying he had a lot of pain. We waited for about but it just kept getting worse where he was crying, so we had to take him to the hospital. Well, they did x-ray and turns out he broke his femur, the one that runs from the hip to knee. He's still in a cast to this day. Whoa. That's scary. It could have caused tetanus or an infection. Not me, but my dad. He had an ear infection so bad he couldn't hear out of one ear and was getting vertigo if he stood up. He's old school though and figured he'd just lay in bed resting to let it heal. Nah. Didn't really work. That shit made him deaf in one ear and there's no fix. He's tried going to doctors and has gotten the ear is complex. Sometimes stuff happens we can't fix and he's tried hearing aids but he's just deaf in that ear now forever. Doctor said if he had gotten in within a few days they would have just given him steroids, I think, and it would have been a fairly successful fix. So yay. If you go deaf in one ear, go see a doctor. My husband called me at work one day and asked me to come pick him up because he sprained his ankle. I took him to urgent care because he couldn't even walk on it. They x-rayed it and he had a big spiral fracture of the tibia plus a smaller fracture in the fibula. A few hours of surgery later he had a bunch of metal in his leg and a hospital bill for $65K. Which insurance covered thankfully. One not so lovely Christmas morning. My ex and I got into an argument which ended with my right shoulder dislocated. This shitty asshole thought he'd seen enough TV shows that he could pop it back in place no problem. Spoiler alert. There were problems. Torn ACL and both menisci while playing soccer. I thought it was just a bad sprain. Hurt like a BTCH and I hadn't been injured before so I didn't really attend to it till 6 months later and after my knee kept popping out. It was bothering me and I couldn't run so I went to the school DR. She said wait and see. I went to a local clinic. He was pretty useless and was saying there was nothing wrong. I insisted and he hooked me up with a specialist who deals with knee injuries. He had me diagnosed after me telling him my symptoms in about 30 seconds. He actually then showed me by pulling my knee out and putting back in place real quick. Then I went for day surgery and then I went for rehab. My rehab guy was Indian and had very soft hands. We talked about cricket. I was in an empty classroom at school, don't ask why. It's personal, and I tripped over the heater. Hit my forehead really hard. I thought it was just a big bruise that I could cover with a hoodie and my mom's concealer. Wrong. I saw the blood running down my face and ran to the nurse's office. Wheeled all the way to the hospital to get stitches in my head. The injury was so deep. It almost reached my skull. And I'm not exaggerating. The worst part was I got it on the day before my birthday. Best day present ever. Luckily it wasn't too bad. I HT on a treadmill and landed on my knee. I ended up limping home then crying on the floor for about 20 minutes. After the adrenaline had worn off I couldn't even stand. Let alone walk. I went to the ER to make sure nothing was broken. Luckily everything was fine but I still can't put all my weight on that knee or turn it to the right. I fractured my tibia and tried to walk it off. Just meant I had to crawl even further to get back home. My friend in elementary broke his tibia falling off of a trampoline. He blacked out for a few moments and when he came to all of his friends kept telling him to sit down as he tried to get up. He tells them it's no big deal. He'll just walk it off, subbone was sticking out through the skin. His friends were traumatized lol. He did get a really cool metal bar screwed into his leg for a couple months though. I slipped in the shower and cut my wrist and thought little of it for a while. I'm used to blood. But it kept bleeding. When I removed the makeshift bandage. A Captain America t-shirt. No less. I saw it was a lot deeper than I initially realized. Walked to the hospital and wound up seeing my artery. It was fine. The blood was because I bleed a lot and this wound was really deep. I'm pretty sure if I hadn't gone to the hospital, I have died within a few hours. Cut my artery on something. Played with it. Or something stupid. When I was a kid, maybe 10 years old, I was swimming at the public pool. I dove into the water. And as I was coming back up I smacked my left foot on the bottom. It hurt really bad. But I didn't want to say anything to my mom. Because she might have made us leave. So I just pushed through the pain and kept swimming. When we finally left, I took a good look at my foot. and the second toe was bent downwards at the first knuckle. It was almost pointing straight down. I didn't tell her at that point because I thought she would get mad about it. So I just left it alone. It eventually stopped hurting, but it stayed bent at 90 degrees. That was about 45 years ago. That toe is still bent down. I know it's not really that serious, but it's the only bone I've ever broken, and it hurt pretty darn bad. I was feeling just black, very just gross and bloated. So I kept drinking water like they tell me to. Thought to myself, if I still feel like this after this wedding, I'm going to urgent care real fast. Bridal music playing, doors open, and I pass the hell out. 2 ambulance rides, and 3 hospitals later. I'd had too much water and lowered my sodium enough to almost kill myself. I missed the wedding and paid like $5,000 in medical bills because I just didn't go to urgent care before the wedding instead of after. I was wearing one of those big fake rings and got it stuck on the kitchen table. I thought it was just bruised and swollen. I left it as is for about 3 weeks until a rowing competition. I just couldn't handle the pain using my hand anymore. Turns out I broke my left middle finger. Needed surgery to get it set because I had waited too long. Bonus: most beautiful scar and stitch work I have ever seen. Fell out of a bunk bed at baseball camp. I really didn't want to leave. It was at Cooperstown, and it wasn't a normal opportunity to go to camp there. I tried playing, but I couldn't even warm up. I ended up with 2 burst blood vessels in the back of my head. I would have been fine with rest, but I wasn't just shaken up like I thought and hoped I was. In combat training, I went down on my knees pretty hard with my full pack on. Doc gave me Motrin. For the next month, I could hardly walk up the stairs. Luckily, I only lived on the top floor. Anyway, that's the story of how my knees crunch when I squat down now. One of the few times in Texas when we got snow as a kid, at least in my area, I ended up jumping down a snowy hill in my neighborhood. On my way down, I hit my knee on what I believed was a rock. It hurt enough that it was hard to walk on it. But my snow pants, for snowboarding, went torn, so my sister and her BF helped me home. Got home and started to disrobe from my outdoor gear and saw that my pants I was wearing underneath were torn and bloody. Thought, oh no. And lifted the pants leg up to look, and I ended up having a 3 inches wide gash on the inside of my knee that went all the way to the bone. Ended up needing to get 2 layers deep of stitches. To say the least. It was more serious than expected. I began feeling pain while sitting down during summer vacation when I was in high school. I figured, it's my obesity. I need to start losing weight. Thought it was a bruised coccyx or something. The pain got worse and worse every time I sat down. Went to the doctor. He spread open my cheeks and confirmed I had a pilonidal cyst right in the crack. Sent me to a surgeon, where I had to have 2 surgeries to fix the problem, and a couple visits to hell up. I mean wound care. Wound care was hell. I've been cyst free for 2 whole years now. Was on my bike and got hit by a car. Landed alright. No helmet, so managed to cushion the impact with my arm. No major pain. I think we've escaped this one. 6 years later, before full recovery for broken AC joint that required 2 shoulder reconstruction surgeries. Ran the army 10-miler. Leg felt weird, so I made an appointment for the orthopedist 2 weeks later. I get there and the guy's in surgery. So I get rescheduled for another 2 weeks later. Get there and it turns out I have a hairline fracture in my shin. I tried to ollie 3 tires stacked and clip the inside of the tire. My friend was videotaping it and my feet were still on the board, though my body was horizontal to the ground. My pelvic bone hit first. Like not the side of my hip, the front of it. I went into class, then asked to be dismissed and went straight to the hospital. I couldn't walk at all. Turns out it wasn't a serious injury, though it was the first time I walked away from something and thought, okay, just walk it off, then couldn't walk it off. I had a family member try to kill themselves a few years back. They're okay now, and for a while I thought I was good. That I could suck it up and move on from it. That shit wound up throwing a damn wrench into my mental health and pushed all the stuff I'd been dealing with since I was a kid into the limelight. I've gone to a counselor since then, but I still remember the day sitting in my car and thinking, nah man. This is the one that FK'd you up. I was in basic combat training in the army. My ankle hurt so bad I couldn't walk on that foot. But we were shooting that day for qualification and I didn't want to miss that. One SG made me go to sick call. X-ray revealed 2 stress fractures in the heel. One from the top down and another from the bottom rushing up to meet it. My left heel was about to pop off. If I hadn't sprained my ankle so badly, my foot would have broken. Boot and crutches were way better than a cast would have been. Had kidney stones for a week before going to the ER. I was rotating through aspirin, acetaminophen, and ibuprofen, taking a dose of something every 2 hours. I thought I'd pulled something and had too much to do to rest. Tore a muscle in my calf and thought I'd walk it off. Then I couldn't walk at all. Then the pain kept escalating. Had to call an ambulance and stay off the leg for 6 weeks. Fell off a skateboard onto my wrist and my parents decided if it was broken I wouldn't be able to move it. I carried on as a 13-year-old during summer for another week until I tried to push myself up out of the pool and felt lightning shoot through it. It was fractured. A pimple that turned out to be a tumor. I just thought it'd disappear and couldn't be bothered much about it until it got to the size of an eyeball. Had pain in abdominal area for 3 days. Just thought it was really bad food poisoning and was planning to go to work. My sister yelled at me to go to the doctor. After literally a 5-minute checkup he says, "Can I get you an ambulance?" Double quote. Turns out my appendix burst.